There we go.
Sweet. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Okay.
You too. Well, it feels good to get out on the infield for a rip. Wow, they smoothed this road out real good. Stayed off of it for all the construction. And boy, oh boy, is it nice. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful morning. It's fall time in Tucson, Arizona. What that means for us is you get up in the morning and it's in the 50s, and by the afternoon it's in the 90s. Well, I'll take it. I'll take it. The humidity from the monsoon season is gone, completely dried out. So that 90 degrees, I mean, most people in Tucson get it in their head that it's cold. I mean, when it gets down into the 50s at night, you'll see the people in Tucson wearing parkas and, you know, fur hats, and but that's okay, because I get to go riding like this. Whew. All I've got on is my armored hoodie, my riding jeans, my riding boots, and of course my helmet. Of course, I should have put in my my visor this morning, my tinted visor, but them's the brakes, of which the infield doesn't have much. So one of the reasons you guys haven't seen me on this bike very often, as of late, is the rear tail light. I'll pull over here and let you guys have a look at it. I think this is where I want to stop. Yeah, it is. So the reason I said that we had that you guys had not seen much of the infield lately was because I did a new tail light. And it was one of these things where I knew it was going to be a game to get this thing to fit. So this is a British Customs old-fashioned tail light. It was meant for a plug-and-play trick on a Triumph Bonneville, right?
So I knew I was going to have to retrofit it. You know, I had to sort of bend the bracket a little bit to get it to where the light wasn't pointing straight down at the ground, given that it rides so low on the fender on the Enfield. And then there was some lighting or some wiring issues. So knowing I was going to have to do some wiring, I wanted to take my time and do it right. Well, I'll finish telling you what happened when I get back on the bike. I'm gonna take a few quick photos here. And I know what you're saying. The wiring. Well, that's always the problem, right? I know a lot of people are worried about working on electronic things on their bikes. And I suppose I get that. It can seem like voodoo if you don't know it. It's never been a thing for me. But the Enfield is special. So I'm thinking this little taillight swap should take about half an hour, right? Because there's this little trick, and I sort of did it in the little reintroduction to the Enfield's taillight video. Sorry about that, my visor wasn't closed. And there's this little trick you can do. Oh, look at the Javelina crossing the road. Look at him. There's going to be more. There's going to be more. Ooh, dang, he got hit. Oh, that's nuts. He got hit by a car. I don't know if you guys could see that either on my wrist cam or on the vlog cam, but he got hit. He's probably walking dead. Doesn't know it. But you notice he was limping, not moving too good. Those are really hardy animals. If they're limping, something bad happened. But he had blood running down the back of his leg and cactus stuck all over him. Anyway, so yes, the Enfield for lighting is special. And not because there's anything unusual, right? For a tail light, what have you got? You got one wire for the constant light, right? The running light, the parking light, whatever we want to call it. And then you have another light, another wire for the brake light when it's activated. And then you have a ground or an earth, okay? Everything on this bike grounds to whatever metal is nearby. So you run a little wire over to a nut or a bolt and ground it out. That's not that big a deal. So going from the British Customs, I had to look at the harness. The harness is built to plug and play to a Royal Enfield. Or excuse me, to a Triumph Bonneville. This is a Royal Enfield, so yeah, not gonna happen. Not as plug and play. So I left part of the pigtail on, and I cut it and put some new connectors on the end. And I was just gonna plug right into the previous connectors I'd used. And you'd have thought it would have been good to go. The rest of it was just sort of shaping the fabrication of that particular bracket to fit my bike. Nope. So I go to plug it in, and this part is British Customs' fault. I'm sure of it, because I'm pretty certain this wouldn't have worked on a Bonneville either. So the British Customs did the license plate bracket. When the three wires come out, they go into a little 3-pin harness. That 3-pin harness plugs into another 3-pin harness that goes up and splits all the wires for your turn signals and all that stuff. Well, I used the other side of that harness. Now, the only place you could see the 3 wires, one yellow, one red, and one black, was on the short side, the side connected to the back of the light. So I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, okay, black is ground, Yellow is probably the constant and red is probably the brake, but if I vice versa them, I can just flip them around. It's not that big a deal. Well, I do that. I hook it all up. One of the wires on the Enfield going all the way up to the front of the bike starts smelling funny. So, all right, disconnect. What's going on here? The Enfield only has one fuse on this bike. There's two now because I put an inline fuse for my big horn. But there's only one fuse on the bike, one big 20 amp fuse, that's it. So if it doesn't pop, the wires will just sit there and smolder and cook. And I'm convinced that, anyway, I'll get to it. So I'm like, okay, now I gotta find out what's going on here. Well, it turns out that when you peel back the shrink wrapping off of the British Customs harness, after the 3-wire harness from the light plugs into the 3-wire harness from British Customs, the wires are flipped and the ground wire switches place with the constant, and that's not supposed to happen. And I'm fairly certain had I plugged that in on one of the Bonnevilles that it would have popped a fuse or caused an issue, right? So that was a little disappointing, but okay, I can get past that. Now I go to look at that other wire and see if it melted or overheated, what the deal was, see if I could get it going. And I come to the realization I'm gonna have to rerun that wire, which is no big deal. I can build a harness and 9-pin DIN and all that good stuff, not an issue. But I go in there, and mind you, this bike is a 2002. Its entire existence, it has lived in its off hours in a garage. And you guys see the care I take care of it. So it's not like I ride it through the rain or through puddles or things like that. And wouldn't you know it, I go to clean off the connectors for plugging in the British Customs taillight, and guess what? I kid you not, the wiring rubber, the rubber covering the tan and the green and gold wire on the Enfield falls off. I mean, and those weren't the ones that got heated. They just fell off. It was just like unbelievable. They just sort of crumbled and fell off, all the coating. Like 80% of it fell off. Now at this point, you know, I had been running video and stuff like that. When I started running into these complications, I neglect to flip the cameras back on because I suddenly become fixated with getting things working right and troubleshooting. So I didn't do a whole how-to video, and it wouldn't have mattered anyway because a lot of these bikes like this one, they're a one-off. This bike was handcrafted. There's a good chance they just threw whatever scraps of wire they had left when they were putting it all together into this bike. So there are no other bikes that are going to be like it. Good chance that none of the wiring, or very little of the wiring on this bike, matches the wiring in the diagrams or any other bikes, even from the same era. So I'm troubleshooting it, but I'm looking at it, and then I look at these wires, and all the wires are corroded. They got like a bunch of blue gunk in them. They're all corroded, and I'm thinking, this bike, like I said, has been garage kept its entire life. It's got a total of 6,000 miles on it. It's not been mistreated. So the only come away I can come from that with is that shoddy parts were used from the factory, and that's, you know, that's not beyond the pale considering, you know, India's industrialized state in 2001 when this bike was built. So I guess I can see that. It's not unrealistic that happens, but bottom line is it took me a lot longer. Instead of half an hour, it took me about 6 hours, but I rebuilt the harness. I used the old pigtail from the factory, and I just undid all of those prongs and put new wires in, documented my own wiring diagram, and it's really not that troublesome. I had to rerun the wires for the rear turn signals and all that, but this was something that should have taken about half an hour. And you know, that's one of those things where the quality construction of these older ones, of these older Enfields from India, they're not always the best, and you kind of get a really unique bike because of it. You know, it's still a blast to ride. I started it up, got on it this morning, had an awesome time, went to the gas station to top her up, and while I was there, 2 people came over to ask me about the bike, and you know, it's still a blast. It's still the beauty of a bike. I'm positive that the new ones are a lot better because they've come such a long way. A lot of their construction now is automated. They're investing in sourcing their parts from better areas, and I'm all good with that. But for this bike, yeah. She still does all right. So just be advised, if you guys have one of these older Enfields or you're looking at getting one, manage your expectations, especially when it comes to tinkering on them, because yeah, you might actually get some of your grandfather's headaches when it comes to working on these bikes. You have to be careful with everything you do. Any nut that you're going to loosen, you better be sure that you're on it good. No questionable purchase. No slightly off size with the wrench or the socket, because you will strip it or you will break the bolt. That will happen. The metallurgy that they used back then, not very good, not really good quality hardware. So those are just things that you have to contend with. So the old adage where on an Enfield you spend as much time tightening bolts as you do riding it, as much is true with any, I think, large displacement single. But just be aware that when you get on those nuts and bolts, you just got to use care. And the thing is I've got some gorilla strength going on, right? I mean, I can hang on a wrench and tighten some stuff really good. And you just don't want to do that here. You gotta go nice and easy with everything you do. Work your way into it. Start easier than you need to and slowly build up. Anyhow, that's it. I didn't mean for this to turn into another Enfield rant, because I'm having a fun time going out for a rip on my little bike. That's the thing with these bikes, is you stop somewhere, someone wants to ask you.
I seen you.